G'day, legends. Let's recap the weekend's fight, shall we? This weekend, of course, there was the PFL's latest attempt to win the hearts and minds of the MMA world. There was another banger One Friday fights from the home of One over at Lumpini Stadium in Bangkok. And the UFC put on yet another event over at UFC Vegas over at the Apex. Now, I didn't watch the entire PFL card, just the co-main and the main event. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of think Larissa Panchenko, was that her name? Whatever. The girl who beat up Cyborg. I kind of think she was robbed. But honestly, who cares? It's WMMA, and it's WMMA in the PFL in the 145-pound division. Honestly, who cares? and that seems to be the general consensus of the entire PFL card over the weekend too. When you go and look at the reviews for the entire card, it's not like there's anyone out there screaming about how great the entire card was for the PFL. So I just didn't feel the need to go back and watch any of the other fights. In fact, people seem to be talking about how, once again, it was a pretty dull affair over at the PFL. This seemed to be the sentiment for the weekend, PFL, super fights, all the fights, actually kind of boring. They described Francis Ngannou as a supercar, being just a dumpster fire organization that is the PFL. However, having said that, like I said, I did watch the co-main and the main. In the main event, it definitely lived up to the hype, with Francis Ngannou taking down Ferreira and just obliterating his skull, right? The ref actually wanted there to be a death inside the smart cage, I'm sure of it. That way it would have actually generated some hype for the card, because it was clean shots to the side of their head that did lay Ferreira out, but the back of the headshot, his head must have gotten slammed by Francis's just huge fists about 6 times with full predatorial power coming into the back of his skull. It reminded me of how dangerous Francis Ngannou is. And I think we as UFC watchers really forget that, because the UFC, they did a great job marketing Francis and how he hits at the power of a Toyota Corolla driving into a wall or so. I don't remember the exact turn of phrase that they used, but they spoke about the power that Francis has in his fists over and over again when he was in the UFC. And all of that has completely gone by the wayside ever since Francis left. But now, when I rewatch Francis again walk into the cage and knock somebody else, I remember just how goddamn dangerous that man is. He is one of those guys that does make me scared that he might unintentionally kill the man that is in there with him. When he uppercut Overeem, you thought that Overeem was dead. And I felt that feeling again last night as the back of their headshots were landing into this dude's skull. I know why Jon Jones is ducking this guy. And don't pretend that Jon Jones did not duck Francis Ngannou. It took Jon Jones 3 years to get ready for heavyweight when he came out with that sort of a shape that he did against Cyril Gane. Let's talk about Francis Ngannou's resume, because some people are bringing up some good points here. He's beaten Curtis Blades. He's beaten Andrei Arlovski. He's beaten Alistair Overeem. He's beaten Velasquez. He's beaten Junior Dos Santos. He's beaten Rosenstrike. He's beaten Miocic. He's beaten Gane. And now he's beaten a PFL champion in Ferreira as well. Where does Francis rank on the heavyweights great list, right? Unfortunately, you've got Fedor up there that people will just never forget about, but fine, all right? Grab your faded tap-out beanie, pretend it's still 2003. Let's have a good time. People have got Fedor on that list. People have got Stipe on that list. But where do you rank them? Does it go Francis, Stipe, Fedor? Does it go Fedor, Stipe, Francis? Where do you rank your heavyweight list? Let me know about it down there in the comments, because I'm genuinely interested in this. This might be something that we bring up on a live stream this week. Who is the greatest MMA heavyweight of all time? Yes, we'll talk about that this week. There's something else that I wanted to touch on here when it comes to Francis's fight. The pressure that this puts on Jon Jones is massive. Do not understate the kind of pressure that Jon Jones is now under. Francis once again looked deadly out there. His aura is back. He needed to get back in the cage after the Joshua KO, and his aura left his body like the ghost of him. But to get back in the cage months before Jon Jones goes into the cage was just a beautiful move from the PFL. They must have done it on purpose, if not fantastic timing, because Jon Jones is going into the cage next against a very, very old and retired man And Francis just went into the cage with a peak athlete at 6'8", who is coming off a PFL season championship win. That is many fights per year against the best in the division to win a championship in the PFL. Francis just went in there against him and obliterated him in the first round. Jon Jones is now going to be going into the cage with a very, very old firefighter who Francis has already obliterated in the first round. And then on top of that, Tom Aspinall has also fought this year in Manchester and got himself a round 1 TKO as well. So the best heavyweights in the world right now have all fought this year, and they've all got a first round knockout, except for Jon Jones, who has got the easiest opponent ahead of him. Yeah, the pressure on Jon Jones to perform in a month and a half time cannot be understated. Imagine if Jon Jones gets into a war with Stipe. Imagine if Jon Jones is in the 5th round against Stipe and it's another Dominic Reyes sort of a fight where it's not a clear win for Jones. And you've got the Francis praises on one side and the Aspinall praises, me, and the Aspinall praises on the other side. And Jon Jones is in the middle, ducking both of them, struggling to put away a 50-something-year-old firefighter. It's not a bloody good look, is it, mate? So let's see how that story wraps up, but I am goddamn excited for it. Okay, next up, the UFC had a card. It was a pretty good card. When you actually watch it with the correct viewing order, which I shared on Twitter and on this very channel's community post, you watch the first fight, then you change over tabs, and then you go back to watch the UFC card. Pretty bloody good night when you watch it that way. I certainly had a great time watching it back, picking and choosing what I was going to watch. I watched the first heavyweight fight against the absolute bum, what's his name, with the blonde hair on 3 times speed. Yeah, he got wrestled up against the cage. Again, striker versus a wrestler. 9 times out of 10, this is what happens. Which brings me to the main event. The main event, to me, was an obvious call, right? Like I said, usually when you put a wrestler in there against a striker, 9 times out of 10, the wrestler wins. That is the MMA meta that we currently live in. Robert Whittaker is going to break that mold this weekend, by the way. But generally, that's what happens. The overall takeaway from the UFC viewing experience lately is that these UFC athletes need to have a good fucking look at themselves. I'm deadly serious here. I think it's time for Dana White to get fucking old school here. The next time there's a card on, tell all the athletes to get to the arena early. Put them all in a room and give them a fucking dressing down, right? Because these cunts do not have a fucking full work day in them, let alone one fucking round anymore. Listen, you are the fucking main event on ESPN. That's the biggest sporting network on the planet. On Saturday night, on the UFC, you're in the biggest fighting promotion there is. Right there. And you have got fucking cardio issues. Cardio issues have been coming from these fighters now ever since the Salt Lake City card, which was meant to be at elevation. And ever since we've dropped back down to a regular elevation, their cardio has been fucking dog shit. We saw it last week. We saw it this week. It's fucking unacceptable to go out there and to give us 2 to 3 minutes of cardio. It's fucking appalling, all right? There should be an update to the athlete's fighter code of conduct. You might not know this, but athletes actually can't go out there and just be absolute pricks to each other or, I don't know, get into road rage incidents where they drive their car into a pregnant woman. That's actually happened, by the way. These fighters can't actually do that. They signed something called the UFC Code of Conduct where they have to behave in a certain way. It's just that the UFC doesn't enforce it very much. I think that they need to add a preface or a clause into the Code of Conduct, which essentially goes that they are to fight to their best capacity in good faith. And essentially, if they do not have more than 5 fucking minutes of cardio, they should be fined. They shouldn't be getting paid their full amount. They should be paid less, let alone paid more. If someone rocked up to work for me and it's an 8-hour workday and they gave me an hour and a half, I'd send them fucking home. What the fuck has been going on with the cardio lately? It's embarrassing. Anyway, that message was essentially to Mikael Pereira and to Justin Tuffer and to all these fighters that get gassed by the second round. When you're a start of the second round, you're already breathing heavily. It is just unacceptable when it is your job. You should be able to fight for at least 15 minutes. Anyway, the same thing sort of needs to be said to Alex Fluffy Hernandez's manager or his team. Again, you win. You're on ESPN. You've got the microphone. Michael Bisping goes, all right, cunt, here we go. You're in the top 10. Let's hear some fucking names. And you go, I don't really care who's ahead of me. Do you not understand how this game works? Are you seriously going to go back into Hunter Campbell's office on Tuesday and try and renegotiate your contract at this sporting entertainment company? Are you not going to call for a title shot? And then the audacity of these guys to have their minute and a half on the microphone where they say nothing, and then Bisping is giving them the wrap up. And you see this all the time. And Fluffy did the same thing. He goes, oh, come on, another way. Like, bro, you've had the microphone for a minute and a half. You've said nothing. And now you want more time? Now you're asking for more time on the mic? Have one sentence banked, ready to go in case you win a fight. Athletes. Jesus, man. Do some cardio. Have it for at least 15 minutes and think of one sentence to say if you win the fight. That is your job now. Focus on that for the next 12 months. Unbelievable, man, what is going on in there. Fluffy's actual performance was really good. Really, really good. I'm so happy that he survived that first round and then just beat the piss out of Mikhail Ferreira. There was no wet blanket wrestling there. Every time Fluffy gets into the cage and actually starts laying on his ground and pound, I thoroughly enjoy it. That is the kind of wrestling that I like to see. Just damaging shots over again. If he can't find the head, he finds the body. And it's not just the body, head tapping shots to keep the ref off you. It's body, head tapping shots there to try and get your opponent out of the cage as quickly as possible. That, if I'm going to heap shit on the fighters, you got to heap praise on them as well. That was amazing ground and pound. Awesome. Lastly, ONE championship happened down at Lupini Stadium. ONE championship put on a 12-fight card. Most of them were Muay Thai fights. There were 2 MMA fights. It is on YouTube for free if you are from the USA, so you can just go there and watch it at your leisure. If you are not from the USA, there's something out there called a VPN. Get on it. And then you can watch the entire card for free. Out of the 12 fights, there were 5 KOs, 1 disqualification because of a bloody soccer kick to a ground opponent. And the main event ended in a second round knockout as well. I'm not going to tell you which way it goes because I don't want to spoil it for you. But ONE Friday Fights had an awesome another fight card as well. So generally, wrapping it all up, Francis Ngannou showed up and showed out. He got himself his first round TKO. That's Tom Aspinall with the first round TKO. That's Francis Ngannou with the first round TKO. John Jones is up next. I absolutely can't wait. The UFC card was really bloody good as well. There was lots of good action on it. I didn't mind it at all. I didn't mind the finish. I did pretty well with my picks. And the ONE championship fight night card was bloody amazing as well. So that is it. We are now into a full week of combat as Robert Whittaker takes on Khamzat Chimaev. He's going to be getting the bloody win. Max Holloway's going in against Ilia Topuria. I'm pumped up for this week. So if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button, jump in on the live streams. I try and go live 3 times a week where we have debates. One of them this week is going to be who is the greatest heavyweight of all time. And yeah, if you're already on board with the channel, make sure to hit that like button. And until then, I will see you all in the next video, guys.